Beverly Gage, GMan, Edgar Hoover and the Making of the American Century. Dive into the thrilling world of Edgar Hoover, the man behind the making of the American century, as portrayed in Beverly Gage's GMan. This book summary takes you on a captivating journey through Hoover's life, painting a vivid picture of his upbringing, motivations, and the complex nature of his character. Discover how he transformed the Bureau of Investigation into the sophisticated Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and amassed immense power in his nearly 5-decade-long career. Learn about the influence he wielded on the American political landscape, his role in hunting down communists and enforcing racial hierarchy, and the controversial legacy he left behind.
Inside Edgar Hoover's mind. Edgar Hoover, born into a well-established Washington family, strove to embody the masculine ideal prevalent during his upbringing. Shaped by societal pressures and family weaknesses, he sought power and control in the Justice Department, ultimately creating the FBI. While his organizational and cataloging skills were impressive, his vindictive nature led to controversial tactics against his critics. Thrust into the role of an ambitious and intelligent young man, Edgar Hoover faced the challenges of his time with determination. Born into the prominence of Washington, D.C., Hoover's family history dated back to the city's rough beginnings, flourishing as it transformed into a powerful metropolis. As he came of age, Hoover confronted societal concerns regarding a lack of strong and capable men. The ideal masculine figure, one that embodied strength, courage, and integrity, had seemingly vanished from public life. This issue weighed heavily on Hoover's mind, fueling his mission to regain the failing honor he witnessed within his own family, from his grandfather's suicide to his father's deteriorating mental health. Enrolling in college, Hoover joined Kappa Alpha fraternity, where he was exposed to Southern white supremacist beliefs. Simultaneously working as a government messenger at the Library of Congress, Hoover discovered his exceptional talent for gathering, organizing, and categorizing data. His skill set would later become instrumental in shaping the FBI. With the outbreak of World War I, Hoover sought a position in the Justice Department, evading deployment. He quickly rose through the ranks and was named head of the Radical Division of the Bureau of Investigation by 1919. Under Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer, Hoover led the infamous Palmer raids against radical anarchists. Although Hoover had a history of winning over authority figures, this operation marked the first significant instance where he faced public criticism. Undeterred, Hoover orchestrated a second round of raids against communist groups in January 1920, resulting in thousands of arrests. However, this operation incited even more backlash, with the Labor Department ultimately withdrawing support for his methods. Rather than mass deportations of communist dissidents, the department opted for case-by-case investigations, leading to significantly fewer deportations than Hoover had envisioned. The criticism Hoover faced revealed his true nature as a leader. Instead of learning from these experiences, he responded vindicatively, using his agents to dig up dirt on those who opposed him and his controversial tactics. Though Hoover possessed the potential for greatness, his deeply ingrained character flaws, shaped by family and society, hindered his path, highlighting a complex portrait of a man caught between ambition and vulnerability. Hoover's evolutionary vision. In 1924, Edgar Hoover was appointed as the acting director of the Bureau of Investigation by the Attorney General, Harlan Fiske Stone, with the understanding that changes would be made to create a more respectable, merit-based organization. Hoover set to work instituting reforms that focused on hiring educated, white men, centralizing fingerprint databases, and methodically organizing information. However, unforeseen challenges such as the Lindbergh baby kidnapping and the proliferation of interstate criminals during Prohibition forced Hoover's intellectual agents to become G-men, armed with Tommy guns, altering the initial vision of the Bureau. In 1924, a young Edgar Hoover found himself offered an unexpected opportunity. Instead of getting fired, as he anticipated, Hoover was asked by Attorney General Harlan Fiske Stone to take charge as the acting director of the Bureau of Investigation. Stone consented to Hoover's insistence on building a respectable, independent, and merit-driven bureau if he took up the position. Later that year, in December, Hoover was named the official director. Once in charge, Hoover was determined to shape the bureau according to his ideals. He exclusively hired men with legal or accounting backgrounds and a specific physical appearance. These men had to be white, fit, and masculine, reflecting Hoover's entrenched belief in a racial hierarchy. In an effort to centralize operations, Hoover established a comprehensive fingerprint database and implemented meticulous data organization and cataloging methods. Constantly monitoring his field offices, Hoover demanded absolute control and knowledge of every agent's actions. However, life had other plans for Hoover's bureau. The kidnapping of renowned aviator Charles Lindbergh's baby compelled President Herbert Hoover to shift the bureau's focus to finding the culprits. As the investigation unraveled, Prohibition was spawning a ruthless class of interstate criminals, names like Pretty Boy Floyd, John Dillinger, and Machine Gun Kelly, who exemplified brutality and challenged Hoover's conception of his agents. Eventually, these agents transformed from data-gathering intellectuals into heavily armed G-men to face the escalating threats. Although Hoover initially envisioned a refined and scholarly crime-fighting task force, the landscape of American crime forced his bureau's evolution. The next segment explores how Hoover adapted his vision and reshaped the FBI in response to these challenges. Hoover's Hollywood-driven transformation. The Great Depression paved the way for Edgar Hoover's transformation, both professionally and personally. Thanks to Hollywood glorifying law enforcement, Hoover gained fame and became a household name. This newfound attention allowed him to build a social life, often accompanied by his close companion, Clyde Tolson. Despite preaching Christianity and traditional values, his personal life deviated from these ideals, showcasing a different side of the man. As the Great Depression unfolded, Edgar Hoover evolved from an ambitious, data-driven workaholic into a celebrated figure, embracing the public's adoration. Hollywood gangster movies had unexpectedly fueled this transition, as a law prohibiting negative representation of law enforcement turned Hoover into a heroic figure. Consequently, his fame skyrocketed, and he opened the doors to the FBI office for tours, eagerly welcoming high-profile visitors. Though enjoying this newfound limelight, Hoover also began to cultivate a social life beyond work. Clyde Tolson, his right-hand man, was his ever-present companion, participating in matching attire at nightclubs and private parties. Their closeness sparked rumors of a secret romantic relationship, challenging Hoover's publicly professed values. With his private letters and interactions revealing his human side, Hoover's life highlighted a stark contrast with his public persona. Known for promoting Christianity, masculinity, and moral hierarchy, his enjoyable times at parties and close bond with Tolson offered insights into a more relaxed personal life. Whether this discrepancy between his personal and professional beliefs troubled him remains unknown. In essence, the Great Depression triggered a period of personal and professional transformation for Edgar Hoover. Hollywood's glorification of law enforcement enabled him to gain fame, build a social life, and showcase a side of his personality that defied his publicly advocated values. Hoover's Worldwide Intelligence Network. During the Roosevelt administration, growing fears of fascism and communism led to the expansion of the FBI and its intelligence-gathering efforts under Edgar Hoover's leadership. In collaboration with the British, Hoover established a global intelligence network, extending beyond the FBI's original scope. Although initially uneasy about this expansion, Hoover eventually embraced it. His extensive cataloging of Japanese citizens and non-citizens exhibiting anti-American behavior proved valuable in the aftermath of the Pearl Harbor attack in 1941. Hoover swiftly mobilized his agents to apprehend over 1,200 Japanese non-citizens within 2 days, with subsequent arrests reaching into the thousands, including German and Italian individuals. Hoover's readiness demonstrated the effectiveness of his far-reaching intelligence operations. Hoover's fight against communism. During World War II, Edgar Hoover led the FBI into Central Intelligence, and though frustrated by restricted power, he fiercely fought against communism and helped to blacklist Hollywood. Despite entering the civil rights movement with hesitation, Hoover powerfully testified to end lynchings. He and McCarthy quietly worked together to scrutinize deviants and homosexuals while maintaining their statuses as influential public figures. Amidst World War II, Edgar Hoover directed the FBI towards a deeper involvement in Central Intelligence. However, as the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency took over international investigations, Hoover's influence diminished, sparking his frustration, especially under the less supportive Truman administration. Determined to uphold national security, Hoover traveled the country, warning against the dangers of communism and emphasizing the significance of conservative Christian values. For a brief period, Joseph McCarthy competed with Hoover in combating communism, but eventually joined forces. Together, they initiated a nationwide search for communists, leading to the Hollywood blacklist, where actors, writers, producers, and directors who were believed to be members of the Communist Party faced congressional hearings. 10 of them were later convicted of contempt and spent time in prison. Moreover, Hoover reluctantly became entwined with the civil rights movement, where the FBI had already investigated over 1,000 cases since the 1920s. Despite his political stance, Hoover found the brutality of lynchings horrifying. In 1947, he provided strong testimony in a report that influenced President Truman's push for anti-lynching legislation, marking Hoover's only notable support for civil rights. Simultaneously, Hoover and McCarthy discreetly targeted deviants and homosexuals, seeking to expel them from public office. Intriguingly, Hoover himself was likely gay, with conjecture also surrounding McCarthy's sexuality. Regardless, both men fervently denounced homosexuality in public. From a contemporary perspective, the 1940s and 50s might seem like a time of questionable choices for Hoover. Nonetheless, these years were his golden era, with many viewing him as a heroic and inspirational public figure. In 1959, the movie The FBI Story, starring Jimmy Stewart, brought Hoover to tears and epitomized the pinnacle of his career. But Hoover chose to persist, unable to resist the allure of continuing his vital work. Hoover's legacy, villain or hero? In the 1960s, Edgar Hoover and the FBI found it challenging to adapt to the rapidly evolving social landscape. Although Hoover clashed with the Kennedys and primarily focused on combating communism, he couldn't prevent the tragic assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King, Jr. Hoover's turbulent relationships with key figures and his waning influence further tainted his legacy. Despite his undeniable impact on American politics during his 48-year tenure, history ultimately questions the quality and morality of Hoover's influence. As the 1960s dawned, Edgar Hoover, the long-serving director of the FBI, found himself struggling to connect with the new generation's ideologies and values. His antiquated beliefs and demeanor starkly contrasted the progressive movements sweeping the nation. Upon appointing his brother Robert as Attorney General, President John F. Kennedy discovered that Hoover's ideals clashed with those of the Kennedy administration. The primary issue of contention was civil rights, but Hoover remained fixated on eradicating communism from the United States. His obsession led him to utilize FBI resources for surveilling prominent civil rights figures, including Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Despite commanding advanced technology and methodologies, Hoover's FBI couldn't avert two monumental American tragedies, the assassinations of President Kennedy and Dr. King. While the FBI led subsequent investigations, the agency's performance was widely criticized. Hoover's disregard for the civil rights movement and personal animosity towards Dr. King cast a perpetual shadow of doubt over these inquiries. When Richard Nixon ascended to the presidency, it seemed as though Hoover's fortunes might improve, given their shared beliefs and friendly rapport. However, Nixon was already contemplating Hoover's replacement before the latter's death in 1972. This fact rendered Nixon's posthumous praise disingenuous. As Hoover's life drew to a close, his reputation already bore scars. Few could question his immense influence and power during his 48-year tenure, and even fewer could deny his role in shaping the American political system. However, history ultimately deemed Hoover more of a villain than a hero. The critical lesson to be gleaned from Hoover's life is that his power and influence didn't materialize overnight. Incrementally, across 8 presidential administrations, he was allowed to amass and wield his immense authority. Consequently, it was not only Hoover but also the system that permitted his dominance, contributing to the contemporary state of America.
Beverly Gage's GMan provides a captivating exploration of J. Edgar Hoover's life, unveiling the intricacies of his character and the profound influence he had on American politics and culture. The summary highlights how Hoover rose through the ranks to shape the FBI, from its early days as the Bureau of Investigation to its eventual growth into one of the world's most powerful intelligence organizations. Despite his substantial contributions, the book explores Hoover's controversial stances on race, anti-communism, and civil rights, ultimately painting a complex portrait of the man. Ultimately, GMan teaches us that, as powerful as Hoover was, his power resulted from a combination of his skills, ambition, and the system that permitted his influence to grow to such a colossal scale.